Well, good morning. So here we are at book 11, Miriam's Family Blitz. One more to go. I'm up to about 40,000 words on Mary's story. So it's coming along. And but this one, it's a little different from the rest of the Miriam series, in that it harkens back to Miriam's War in the early days of the Blitz, and it's basically putting those first 15 days of the Blitz under a microscope. So basically it's looking at those first 15 days and what they went through in the very early days of the Blitz. So the entire book is about those first 15 days. In the books, there's no chapters. It's just days. And I make that clear in the book. So there's not much more I can say about that. And it's the 11th book. And Mary's book will be number 12. And it will be the end. But Mary's book is coming along. Quite happy with that. Although it will take a rewrite, of course, because I want to get everything correct. While I'm about it, I've been reading some of the reviews that were written 15 years ago, and I'm very saddened because the quality of my writing was not good then, and many people have picked me up on how poor the writing was back in those days. But of course they've all been rewritten now to a much better standard. But unfortunately Amazon will not let me take those poor reviews down, so there they must stay. So this is to anybody looking at this or listening to this, they've all been rewritten. That's all I can say. Anywho, here it is. Good luck.
Okay, so for this deep dive, I want you to just for a moment try to imagine it. It's late summer, 1940. Specifically, it's Friday, September 6th. And there's this kind of deceptive quiet over London's East End, over the streets of Stratford and Bow and Forest Gate. This is where we're starting. It's a massive dive requested by so many of you into the first 15 days of what became the Blitz.
It's such a critical moment, and our focus here is really on that brutal, incredibly rapid shift for ordinary people. Yeah. We have this amazing stack of sources, personal accounts, notes, articles, all centered on one extended family, the Barrows and their circle. And our mission really isn't just to list events, it's to get on the ground and understand what it was like for Miriam, her parents, Faith and Percy, her sisters, how they went from this state of nervous waiting to just mass trauma overnight, balancing the daily grind with this constant existential fear.
And that's what's so powerful about this material, right? The sheer detail. It covers those first 2 weeks starting September 7th and gets into everything. Communal meals, these little forbidden romances people were clinging to. And then the grim reality, the smell inside an Anderson shelter. It's such an essential look at how people find resilience when their whole world is literally falling apart around them.
And to really feel the shock of that Saturday, September 7th, you have to understand what Friday was like. You have to get the fabric of their lives just 24 hours before. I mean, life was already tough. It was defined by sacrifice, by hard work, and this constant financial worry, all tied up in the wartime economy and rationing.
Okay, so let's start with Emily. She's Miriam's sister, and she's working at what was called a British restaurant. Now, this wasn't some fancy place. It was a practical thing, right? It grew out of the old London County Council's meal service. What role did these places actually play?
Oh, they were lifelines, an absolute lifeline. The sources really stress that. They were serving, over 300 plain but wholesome meals every single day. The whole point was to help people stretch their ration coupons, which were already so scarce, especially for office workers or for families with husbands away at war.
And for Emily, this was deeply personal. She wasn't just working there. She's Faith and Percy's daughter. But her own husband, James, had been killed less than 6 months earlier in a training accident. So she was forced back to work at this restaurant just to keep paying the mortgage on her flat. The very meal she was serving was keeping her and her daughter afloat.
Exactly. And that meal, for 6 pennies, you got incredible value. You'd get 3 courses. Soup, then a really hearty main like a stew or a shepherd's pie, and then a sweet, a little tart or something. It was the basic fuel keeping the city on its feet, and these places were just packed from morning till they closed.
And what about the dynamics inside the restaurant? Her boss, Mrs. Padmore, sounds like quite a character, the widow of a World War I major. The sources say she ran the restaurant as if she herself was in the trenches in 1917. That sounds intense.
It was intense, but it came from this place of deep, tragic empathy. Mrs. Padmore had lost her husband and her 3 sons in the First World War, and this wasn't some secret. It was the engine of her compassion. She wasn't just about efficiency. She was always checking on the younger staff, making sure they were okay. She took a special interest in Emily and her little girl, Dawn. She understood what it meant for a mother to have to take time off. The trauma of war was already there, you see. It was baked into the previous generation.
And that stress, that waiting, it was spilling over into everyday life, wasn't it? Creating these domestic tensions. Emily had this constant battle with her downstairs neighbor in Windmill Lane, Miss Blackstock. The sources describe her as a woman whose personality consisted entirely of protesting about one thing or another. What a line.
It's an amazing description, isn't it? And in those cramped East End flats, any shared space, like a hallway, could become a war zone. Emily apparently had to force herself to be sharp with the old woman. Even after Miss Blackstock had complained about the hearse that carried Emily's own husband away. I mean, that kind of bitterness, it was just everywhere.
But the real point of conflict with Miss Blackstock was the shelter, right? Her refusal to prepare. She just wouldn't use the Anderson shelter in their shared garden, called it an abomination. Why? When the threat was so obvious.
It's a mix of things, I think. Sheer defiance, maybe a bit of denial. A refusal to let the government intrude on her life. She apparently declared she'd refuse to use it if and when the time arises. It's this powerful bit of foreshadowing, you know, this stubbornness that could and would become a fatal vulnerability just hours later.
Let's shift to another family conflict inside the barrel house itself. This is about Miriam's sister, Sarah, who's about to turn 29, and her new boyfriend, Terry. Percy, the father, is absolutely furious about him.
Oh, he hates him. Percy believes Terry is simply no good. And the local gossip backs that up. They see Terry as a flyboy, loud-mouthed brute. So this isn't just a protective father, it's a clash of values. Terry is a bit too flashy, a bit too independent for Percy's traditional working-class world.
But Sarah is completely in love, and Miriam and Emily support her. She defends him, says he's gentle, that she could see herself having his babies.
Yeah.
It's just so human, isn't it? This passionate, sort of forbidden romance blooming right on the edge of a catastrophe. The world is about to end, and they're arguing about who is a suitable husband.
And that fragile world just, it shattered. At exactly 4:45 p.m. on Saturday, September 7th, Sarah, her friend Penelope, Alan, and Terry, the man Percy despised, they were all in West Ham Park, enjoying what turned out to be the very last hours of anything resembling peace.
And West Ham Park wasn't just a park anymore, was it? It was heavily militarized, a target. As they're walking, they're passing anti-aircraft gun batteries. 3-inch guns. They see barrage balloons overhead, operated by the young women of the wave.
The whole landscape of leisure had become an arsenal. It was surreal. The Pioneer Corps had even dug up huge fields for allotments for the Dig for Victory campaign. Sarah apparently remarked that it made her father's own victory garden look tiny. The war was physically everywhere.
And it's right there at the gun emplacement that the signal comes. A telephone rings. And Terry and Sarah are close enough to hear the sergeant shout to his corporal, "The balloon's gone up."
Yeah.
And then he turns to the public, to them, and says, "I suggest you all hop it now, go home immediately."
And just moments after that command, the siren starts, that terrifying, oscillating wail. The sources are so clear about the psychological shock. They'd heard it in drills, they read about it. But this was real.
This is where it gets fascinating. The crowd, which moments before was just strolling, enjoying the sun. In a split second, the sound turns them into what the source calls a frightened conglomeration, just stampeding for the gates. So the first threat isn't the bombs, it's the crushed of panicked people.
Alan notes it in his diary. He's horrified by how quickly the social order just dissolves. People are running over flower beds, knocking each other down. It's every man for himself. Sarah and Penelope actually get separated for a moment in the crush. The shock of the crowd's behavior was almost as scary as the siren itself.
So Alan grabs Penelope and runs for his Anderson shelter. And this is their first real dive into a shelter. But his shelter, it's new, it's clean, but it's uncovered. It doesn't have the protective layer of earth on top yet.
Which absolutely terrifies Penelope. She's convinced its shiny metal roof is a beacon to the Nazis reflecting the sun. And Alan isn't ready either. He's out of breath, his shirt is sticking to his back. Once they're inside, in the dark, Penelope realizes there are no bunks built, just a pile of wood on the floor. This is not the cozy refuge people might imagine.
And then the sound of the attack starts.
Yeah. It's described as this low, deep, jarring sound. Definitely man-made, one source says. Like a badly tuned radio with all the high notes taken out. That's when they knew. This is really happening.
But even then, even with bombs starting to fall, the old social rules just held on.
It's incredible. Alan has this huge desire to comfort Penelope, to put his arm around her. They're alone, in the dark, in mortal danger. Yet to him, that felt wrong. Too intimate.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why? Why would that restraint hold up under that kind of pressure?
It just speaks volumes about the power of their upbringing, of the social contract of the 1940s. The source suggests his inner voice told him that holding her hand alone in the dark like that was going too far. At a table with her parents, fine, but alone, in the dark, underground. It implied an intimacy that was just not acceptable for courtship. His social boundaries were more powerful than his instinct for comfort. It's remarkable.
So as that first night falls, the family is completely scattered.
Yeah.
And their experiences are worlds apart. Back at the main house on White Road, you have Percy, Faith, Miriam, and the grandkids, Peter and Mary. They get to Percy's shelter.
And their shelter is the ideal, really. It's properly built, covered with earth, plants growing on it. It looks solid. Inside, they've got candles, but the fear is still thick in the air. They can hear the Bofors guns firing constantly from West Ham Park. And the shrapnel from the shells keeps hitting the roof of the shelter, making them jump every time.
Miriam's main worry, though, is the kids, especially the toddler, Mary. The noise, the confusion, being trapped in this small space. It sends her into a screaming fit. And it lasts for over an hour. You couldn't shield them from the sound of it, the whistling of the bombs coming down.
Right. Now contrast that with what Sarah and Terry are going through. Total desperation. They're caught out near the rec cinema as the bombs start falling heavily on the docks. Terry's instinct is to drag Sarah into the communal shelter at a place called Hartford Buildings. And this place, it was notorious. A sordid tenement building.
And Sarah's first impression is just disgust. The smell hits her and she starts to gag. It's bad drainage, but it's something worse.
Yeah.
And she realizes what it is.
Yes. It's human excrement. Diarrhea. Smeared all over the concrete floor. Terry grimly identifies it as probably Montgomery's work, a local drunk who was known for this.
I mean, could you even imagine? And this is where the absurdity kicks in.
Yeah.
Sarah is paralyzed. She says she cannot stay in there. But Terry, in this moment of sheer panic and, I guess, a weird sense of duty, he decides he has to clean it.
He has to clean it while the Luftwaffe is bombing them.
It's insane.
It's civilian heroism at its most bizarre. He finds a scrubbing bucket, fills it with rainwater, and then during the raid, he runs out and douses the mess. Twice, he is scrubbing the floor of a public shelter while bombs are exploding nearby.
And Sarah's reaction to this is, it's just the perfect detail. She doesn't scream. She starts giggling.
Hysterically.
Yeah.
An uncontrollable giggling fit. It's a pure trauma response. It's the sheer unbelievable ridiculousness of her boyfriend cleaning up diarrhea during an air raid that could kill them at any second. It's horror and hysteria all mixed into one.
And after that, they look outside and see the sky over the docks is just on fire.
Yeah.
Huge orange flames shooting hundreds of feet into the air. That's when they realize this isn't random. They're targeting the docks. They're targeting the East End.
It's so alarming they decide they have to move. They run to another public shelter near the town hall. And this one isn't filthy, but it's miserable in a different way. It's just suffocatingly crowded. The air is thick with smoke and sweat and fear.
Everyone's chain smoking to calm their nerves. And it's here that Sarah meets a young woman, Beth, a mother whose husband is in the Navy.
And Beth tells her something just heartbreaking. She says, I love him, but I wish we'd had waited. It's not right bringing a child into the world under these conditions.
Yeah.
It's just this statement of complete despair, questioning life itself in the face of all this destruction.
And the noise just never stopped, that constant rumbling and vibration.
It felt like forever. It's past midnight. People are getting hungry, irritable. The all clear doesn't sound until 4:45 in the morning. And they finally emerge into this strange, contaminated air. It smells of burning wood, of gas, and this damp metallic scent. The world had completely changed.
So daybreak on day 2. And for Emily, returning home to Windmill Lane, the first thing she feels is this need to check on Miss Blackstock. Despite everything, despite how awful the woman was, she felt compelled to check.
And what she finds is, it's shocking, but also so quiet. She finds Miss Blackstock in her armchair, in her old black dress. But she has this deathly pallor. She realizes she's not breathing. She had died, it seems, of natural causes. Probably before the raid even properly started. The room just smelled of lavender.
Emily runs out and finds a policeman. But he's young and completely overwhelmed.
His face is pale. You can tell he's seen too much already. He takes a note, but he just tells Emily to get back into the shelter. He promises someone will come for the body as soon as it's over. That's if there's anything left of us. It just shows how stretched the services were. A natural death was bottom of the list.
And when the authorities do finally show up, the response is just bizarre. This man from the coroner's office, a Mr. Anderson, who Emily thinks looks like Hitler's older and much uglier brother, he's immediately obsessed with one idea.
Suicide. He's convinced it was suicide. He's grilling Emily about aspirin, medicine bottles, a will. He just can't seem to accept that Bert ran a serious black market operation. He was supplying everything you couldn't get. Food, petrol coupons, even luxuries like nylons and whiskey. The penalties were huge, massive fines. Years in prison. But the demand was insatiable. The worse the U-boat threat got, the richer Bert became.
But Bert's facing his own crisis. He's got this painful lump on his neck he thinks is cancer, but he won't see a doctor. And on that Saturday, before the raid, he goes to Percy and Faith with a serious warning.
Yes. His sources, his interesting people, had told him that Hitler was about to start bombing London heavily. He tells them to get out, to evacuate.
And Percy just dismisses it. He's got his AFS duties.
Right. But Bert's own experience that night proves his intelligence was right. He's driving to Tilbury, and he sees it. The massive fireball from the first bomb on the docks. He watches one plane, then 4 more, all heading for the same spot, and he realizes the sheer, calculated, destructive power being unleashed on the East End.
And he feels this intense shame. He counts 19 fire engines screaming past him, knowing his own brother is probably in one of them, heading into that inferno.
He, the man who profits from the war, is paralyzed by fear, while his brother is running towards the danger. It's a huge moment of realization for him.
And this really gets to the moral ambiguity of the time, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The government is condemning men like Bert as committing treason. But the reality on the ground is that everyone, even good, honest people like Faith, Percy's wife, relied on it. She relied on Bert's off-the-ration deliveries, on the free vegetables from Terry, the man her husband hated. When it came to feeding your family, necessity just trumped everything else.
Let's turn to Percy now and what he was facing with the AFS, the Auxiliary Fire Service. These were volunteers, right?
Mostly, yes. Ordinary men who were suddenly on the front line of this hellscape every single night. And the sources detail his experience at one explosion in West Ham. It's a scene of total annihilation. There's a gigantic crater in the street. Every utility is ruptured gas, water, sewage. So you've got yellow flames shooting out of the ground.
The damage is just everywhere. Windows shattered for blocks, roofs just torn off. But it's the human cost that breaks him.
It is. As the rescue teams arrive, they start laying the dead out on the pavement.
And Percy sees 43 bodies. 43.
And among them, 10 children under the age of 5.
Oh, God.
Just let that sink in. 10 toddlers from one bomb. That's the moment the source says just floored him. The realization that this wasn't some distant war. It was here, and it was killing their children indiscriminately.
It's just such a brutal contrast to the official story in the papers. The whole cheeky chappy East Ender taking it on the chin.
Exactly. The private reality for men like Percy was nervous exhaustion, injury, and this overwhelming trauma. The cost of those first few days was just immense.
So as the days go on, this nightly horror becomes the new normal. And the strain really starts to show, especially on the children.
Emily notices that her daughter Dawn is regressing. She's wetting the bed again, and she's lost interest in drawing, which was her main escape.
But at the same time, you see this strange resilience. The other grandkids, Peter and Mary, they start to see the shelter routine as a sort of game.
It's a coping mechanism, isn't it? The candles, the blankets, the sudden break from routine. It's an adventure that masks the terror. Mary would talk about her father, Raymond, who had died, but she never seemed that upset. It's like she still half believed he might come back. They were adapting, but were they healing? Probably not.
Meanwhile, Miriam and her friend Rafa are worried about Bert. He's still sick, still refusing to see a doctor.
They find him at the Princess Alice pub, being looked after by Susan, the landlady, and he confesses a secret to them. He's found a better shelter. He's using his connections to get into the crypt of the local church during the raids.
The Black Marketeer, using the House of God for elite protection.
It just shows how survival created its own strange hierarchies, didn't it?
And the reality of the war was seeping into every part of life, into the workplace.
At Miriam's factory, Cowan Brothers, they get the news that Mr. Davis's sister was killed. And everyone liked her. She was always pleasant, always well-dressed. And that news just stunned them. It shattered that sense of denial. It brought home the truth that real people were dying. It wasn't abstract anymore. It could be anyone.
And then that lottery of death lands right on their street. White Road, a high explosive bomb lands just 5 houses down from them at number 22. It completely destroys the Walkers' home.
The sound, the shaking. Even in their shelter, it was so intense that Faith was just an emotional wreck. A near miss is almost worse psychologically. But Miriam, she immediately goes into protector mode. She tells the kids it was just a neighbor's shed that blew up, a necessary lie to keep them calm.
And the aftermath is just stark. Mr. and Mrs. Walker are both dead. He was an engineer, essential to the war effort.
And as Miriam and Rafa are standing there in the cold, looking at the rubble, they have this shared, chilling thought.
The realization.
The realization that for a simple change of fortune or wisp of air or a fraction of a second later, that could have been their shelter, their house, their family. It's that visceral understanding of how close they were to annihilation every single night.
And for Percy, that's the breaking point. Seeing his neighbors dead on top of everything he'd seen with the AFS, he just snaps. He demands that Faith take the children and leave London, go west where it's safe.
But Faith's refusal is absolute. She is exhausted, she's terrified, but her defiance is incredible. She brings up Miriam's awful experience with evacuation before, how isolating it was, and she will not leave her husband. Her words are final. I'm not going anywhere, not without you.
And that really defines the spirit of this period, doesn't it? That fierce resilience, choosing to face it together, enduring this unbelievable cycle, go to work, queue for food, eat whatever you can get, shelter for 9 hours, wait for the all clear.
And the sources say that on the final Sunday of this period, after another long raid, Faith is just emotionally spent, and she's just wondering, how long can we possibly endure this?
When you look back at these 15 days, what really stands out is that constant, impossible clash. You have the totally mundane, the six-penny meal, the arguments over Miriam wearing dungarees, the petty fights with Miss Blackstock.
And it's all happening against this backdrop of monumental random destruction. It's the contrast that's so jarring.
The details are what make it so real. It's not just a bomb fell. It's the horrific smell in that first public shelter. It's Sarah's hysterical giggling fit. It's Percy having to see the grim tally of 43 bodies and knowing 10 of them were children under 5. You can't forget that.
No, you can't. And that constant dread, it just forced everyone to change. You see Sarah defying her father to be with the man she loves. You see Faith, the moral center of the family, pragmatically accepting black market goods to feed her grandchildren. The old rules were just breaking down under the pressure.
And finally, you have to come back to the children, to Peter and Mary. The source material suggests they adapted so quickly that they started to see the nightly shelter routine as a kind of game, an adventure.
Which leaves us with a really crucial question about trauma, one that goes way beyond these 15 days. In a world where your only goal every single day is just to survive, does that childhood resilience actually erase the fear? Does it erase the memory of the noise, the shaking, the constant threat? Or does it just mask it? Mask the profound, lasting effects of those first 2 weeks of terror on an entire generation? That's something to think about long after the all clear is sounded.